Okay. I think Jairada Madhava must have already been sung.
No.
No? Adiparu was not singing just now?
Yeah, but he wasn't on this call. You can do brief Jairada Madhava.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Hey Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Sha Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Datati Swapadantikam Janmadyasya yatam vayati taratashtarteshvabhigya swaratene brahmaridhaya rati kavaye bhuyanti yasurayah tejo varimridam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha dhamna svena sadhana rastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 21, the dynasty of Bharata, verse number 7. Atanyo bokshamanasya vibhaktasya mahipatihi vibhaknam yabajatasmai Krishalaya Harim Smaran. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: Thereafter, having divided the remaining food with his relatives, Rantideva was just about to eat his own share when a Shudra guest arrived. Seeing the Shudra in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Rantideva gave him also a share of the food. Purport: because King Rantideva saw everyone as part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he never distinguished between the Brahmana and the Shudra, the poor and the rich. Such equal vision is called Samadharshina. Pandita Samadharshina. One who has actually realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart. excuse me, one who has actually realized that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart, and that every living being is part of the Lord, does not make any distinction between the Brahmana and the Shudra, the poor, the Ridra, and the rich, Dhani. Such a person sees all living beings equally and treats them equally without discrimination. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. So we're hearing about Ranti Dev. Ranti Dev, as we heard a couple of verses ago, is famous for his dependence on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It said that he was nourishing himself by whatever was provided by fate or the Supreme Lord. One is reminded of Gaur Leela, Srivas Thakur. He has a similar story. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him that you are a householder. You're having a big house also, and so many servants are there and so many dependents. But I never see that you are working. So how do you maintain? So that's a very good question. If you are a householder having so many dependents and so much paraphernalia, you need to work usually to maintain all of that. But Srivas Thakur wasn't doing any work, so Mahaprabhu was curious about that. So Srivas Thakur clapped his hand 3 times. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, can I get the purport? It's not a very elaborate answer. So Srivas Thakur said, if the Lord doesn't provide on the first day, then that day I'll fast, my whole family will fast. If second day, the Lord doesn't give any sustenance, that day also we will fast. On the third day, if the Lord does not give any sustenance, that day also we will fast. And if the fourth day nothing comes, then I'll take myself and all family and we'll drown in the Ganga. And so Mahaprabhu glorified him for his faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That certainly he is our protector and he is our maintainer. So Ranti Dev was similarly glorified a few verses ago. And he's also been glorified for his vision of the personality of Godhead, that he saw the Lord everywhere situated in this world. So philosophically, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we follow a concept called as Sat Karyavad. So Sat Karyavad essentially means that the effects are non-different from the cause, because the effects exist inside the cause as inherent potential. For example, peanut oil or peanut sauce. You may like the peanut sauce when if you eat Thai. People like the peanut sauce all the time, see? Or peanut oil is not different from peanuts because peanut oil is the effect, or peanut sauce is the effect, and the peanut is the cause, right? So the oil is not different from the cause, which is the peanut, because the peanut oil exists inside the peanut as an inherent potential, right? Sand does not exist inside the peanut. You will never get sand out of peanut, but you'll get peanut oil, you can get peanut sauce out of the peanut, right? So that means that the peanut oil is not different from the peanut because it exists as an inherent potential inside the peanut. At the same time, we use this word not non-different, but there is some difference. Because if there was no difference, then you wouldn't use a different word, right? You just call it peanut, but you don't call it peanut, you call it peanut oil, or you call it peanut sauce, right? So there is some difference. And there's also a difference because the cause, a particular cause can have more than one effect, right? And the cause may also have qualities that the effects don't have, right? So the peanut, for example, has hardness in it, right? It's crunchy, I mean, whatever, it has different other qualities that the peanut oil does not possess. So although the peanut oil is not different from the peanut is still different from the peanut oil, right? It has some differences there. Otherwise, you would not use different words, okay? So also, the universe is an effect of God. So God is a cause. So the universe is not different from the cause. Right? Because the effect, the world, exists inside the cause, the Supreme Lord Paramatma, as an inherent potential. And then it is manifested from that particular cause. At the same time, the cause, which is the Supreme Lord, is different because he has other effects that like the soul, for example, the jiva is also energy of the Lord. So that has a different effect from the world. So he has difference there. And he also has other qualities that the effect doesn't have, like being eternal and so on. So anyway, this philosophy is there, and this understanding allows one who imbibes this understanding as realization, allows them to see the Supreme Lord everywhere and be aware of his presence wherever they are in the world. Just like when you're eating peanuts, or excuse me, peanut oil or peanut sauce for your chai preparation. So everywhere you are aware of the peanut, even though it is peanut sauce, and you may not be directly thinking of peanuts per se, but you cannot but be aware of the presence of peanuts and peanut sauce because it's not different, right? And there is no place in the peanut sauce where peanut is not located, the taste of peanuts, right? It is everywhere. So similarly, one who has imbibed this realization of the Supreme Lord, that everywhere they move around in the material world, there is the awareness of Bhagavan is there, the awareness of Paramatma, the Supreme Lord. So I think in philosophical terms, they call this as panentheism. So you know this term pantheism. Pantheism means when people see the universe as God. That's called pantheism. So that's very popular today. Although people probably don't think of themselves as pantheists, but they're always talking like this: the universe will bless you, just trust in the universe, like these hippies and yogis and people who are scared to say God. Basically, they're talking about God, but they're scared to use the 3-letter curse word, G-O-D. It's like a curse word. In the secular world, it's considered inappropriate to be used in public spaces. So instead of saying God, they say the universe. The universe is giving, the universe is reciprocating. So this is pantheism. So they take God only as the universe, or God is immanent in the world. So panentheism is like Sakaryavat philosophy. It's like a nifty term that kind of captures that concept. Panentheism means that God is beyond the world, but includes the world and interpenetrates it. Right? So everywhere you will find God's presence is there, Paramatma is there. Except at the same time, he's beyond it. So this panentheism is a word they use. It's a good word. It very much captures this concept of Sakaryavat, as Gaudiyas also follow it. So we're like panentheists. We're not pantheists. We don't just say God is immanent in the world, but he is also beyond the world. And ultimately, devotees are, of course, interested in participating with the Lord in his realm that is beyond this universe. At the same time, while existing in this universe, they are constantly aware of his presence everywhere, just as you're aware of peanut when eating peanut sauce like this. So seeing everything in this world, or seeing the presence of God in everything in this world, or in a sense, seeing all the forms encountered in this world as manifestations of God, a particular feature. So that naturally translates into a sort of regard for everything in existence. A regard, you appreciate the sacredness of everything. And it also transforms the way that you establish relationships with the environment around you. Nowadays, people, they're into environmentalism. But they try to, they want to have environmentalism philosophy without acknowledgement of the sacred that is within nature, the sacredness that is God ultimately. At least not all, I'm sure, but at least the prominent sort of things that get pushed forward are very secular in nature. But they don't realize without the acknowledgement of the presence of God as immanent in the world, then the only relationship the jivas, who are conditioned jivas, who are prone to exploitation, the only relationship they'll establish is one of exploitation. Once you banish the sacred from the world, then you have free range to exploit it. So previously, in older cultures, they saw God or something sacred in all of nature. So you couldn't just exploit it, right? You had to do some yagya, pray to some nymph or some deity. That is how you have to establish a relationship. You couldn't just wholesale go and just do whatever you want. But once you banish God from, or the sacred from nature, then only one relationship will be there, one of exploitation. So, but if you see that everything is actually manifestation of God in a particular feature, everything is sacred in that sense, then your regard for everything will be very profound, as your regard for the Supreme Lord is. So here we're hearing that Rantidev had this sort of vision. So he was seeing everyone as, you can say, manifestation of God, Paramatma, non-different from him, because they are his particular energy. So he, as the story is going here in this particular verse, he had fasted for 48 days, even from water. He was finally about to break fast, and some Brahmana came. So a small portion of the food that he had set aside for himself and his family, he gave to that Brahmana. Then now again, he's about to break his fast. Atanyo bokshamanasya vibhaktasya mahipati. Just as he's about to eat, having set aside a little share for his family, he's just about to eat. Right at that time, someone else comes. Vibhaktam vyapajatasmai vishalaya hanam smana. Some says here Vishalaya, so it's translated here as a Shudra. He came, so then he divided another portion of the food that he had set aside from himself and that his family, and he gave it to that Shudra. And how did he give it? Harim Smaran. He was remembering Hari. He was remembering the Supreme Lord. So previously the guest was a Brahmana. So Brahmanas hold a very high social position in society. This society, not today's society, but this society. So it may be natural that you would treat this Brahmana with the proper regard he's due according to his social position. But here is mentioned this is a Shudra, so the king is in a superior social position. So the tendency of the conditioned demeanor is to show contempt for those who are their inferiors, right? If someone is their superior, they have envy. If someone is their equal, they also have envy, but that envy turns into competition. And if someone is inferior, they show contempt, a tendency of the conditioned demeanor. So here the Shudra is in a lower social position, but Ratideva is not showing any contempt. Rather, he's showing deference. The same deference that he showed to the Brahmana, he's showing to the Shudra. Why? Harim Smaran, because he's remembering Hari. This Shudra is also a manifestation of Hari in a particular feature. His body, of course, is a manifestation of the external energy, which is not different from my Lord. And his actual self, soul, is also a manifestation of Hari, who is not different from my Lord, right? Because Maya Shakti, Jiva Shakti are Krishna's energies, Paramatma Shakti specifically. So immediately he was remembering Hari when seeing also the Shudra. And so he showed respectful deference to him also. And the food that was meant for him and his family, he gave to this Shudra. So this is being glorified here, this vision of reality, this vision of Supreme Lord. So like in the previous purport, Prabhupada is drawing our attention to the verse, Vidyavanaya Sampane Brahmani Gavi Hastini, Shunin Chaiva Shwapakecha Pandita Samardarshina. So in context of where this verse appears in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking also there about the vision of Paramatma. So how the enlightened yogi has a vision of Paramatma. So when he looks upon a learned and humble Brahmana, or a dog, or a cow, or a dog eater, in all cases, he is seeing the presence of the Paramatma. So this is Pananthism, basically. And therefore, Pandita, he's called as learned, and the learnedness is manifest in his Samadharshina. He sees with an equal vision. Right? These are all manifestations of my Supreme Lord. And therefore, they are due respect. So one who has actually realized the Supreme Lord, Prabhupada's writing here, is situated in everyone's heart. And the ever-living being is part of the Lord, does not make any distinction between the Brahmana and the Shudra, the poor and the rich. Such a person sees all living beings equally and treats them equally without discrimination. So I thought that was an interesting statement. What does he mean he doesn't see any distinction? If he doesn't see any distinction, then why he should show any special deference also, this way or that way? If he sees no distinction. So this is the meaning of the saying non-different, Non-different, but some difference. That is the meaning. Otherwise, you can embrace a tiger also. Why not go and feed the tiger also? Some tiger shows up and you can feed the tiger, but no, you don't embrace the tiger. But you also see that this tiger is a manifestation in one sense of my Lord only. But you have to use your intelligence. But this is actually only one level of application. Actually, I should stay here. I wanted to say this also. This verse is not exactly giving us an ethic, but is describing the realization of one and the behavior of one who has that realization. So this is not an injunction, right? This is telling of a person who has his realization and his ethic. His ethic, it's not giving an injunction for what our ethic should be. This is a natural result of one who has attained such realization. There's a statement in India, how's it go? Oh my God, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. A very famous phrase that used in little political circles in India, that the whole world is my family. And then I used to know this. The basic statement is that those who see, difference between one living being and other, this is, ignorant. But the enlightened see that everyone is their family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So this is often used to push certain political agendas. Like here in the West, I'm sure this phrase will be very much embraced. Everyone is our family, yay. So we accept everyone, the gays, the transgenders, the blacks, the whites, the Asians, everyone. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Even the murderous people, you also come. That you murder all of us. Cross the border and murder us all. We don't care. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, we're one big family. So they may also be attracted to this concept. But this verse, this statement, as many learned persons and devotees also have done research. So this verse it appears in one book for children. It appears in several books for children, describing sort of moral ethics for children. And actually the statement is used in a negative, that those who have this vision, when it comes to niti or moral engagement, are foolish. Because you have to see difference when you're acting empirically in the world. But it does also appear in one Upanishad also. This is coming up spontaneously from something I've studied earlier, so I'm not remembering the details, but this phrase also comes up in one Upanishad. And when it's mentioned in Upanishad, it's talking about the Brahman Sthiti, one who is situated in the awareness of Brahman. So it's not describing an ethic, it's describing the realization of one situated in Brahman. So he sees in this way. So I want to make this point that this is not an ethic. You can try to apply also, no problem, there's no harm. We should also try to learn to see the Supreme Lord everywhere and establish our relationship accordingly. That means treating anyone and everyone with respect. So that is, we will try for that also. But this is not exactly an injunction, because you also cannot do artificially. So Prabhupada speaks about this in his Ishopanishad, that those who try to establish universal brotherhood without having the vision of Brahman or the vision of the absolute, then he says they are false, like I forget the phrase he uses exactly, like false politicians. He uses some heavy pejoratives basically to describe these people. So that's the essence that we should get. Because they don't have that realization, so they must be using it to exploit, because that is the behavior or the ethic of the jiva who lacks his realization. So if he's using this statement when he lacks realization, it must be for some other form of exploitation. Just like now, same. This is always the same. Politicians will always use the greater good of mankind to exploit. Right? They will make some propaganda that this is for the good of everyone. And then rack up $10 billion for themselves, which everyone doesn't get to see in any form. So this is natural. This is always going on in the material world. When you don't have the vision of Paramatma, then you will use the good of everyone to exploit. This is natural tendency of the conditioned jiva. So anyway, I wanted to bring that out here also, that this is not an injunction, but this is the ethic of one who has that realization like Ranti did. So he's saying everyone with equal vision, and he doesn't treat anyone with discrimination. Another example may be like Prahlad Maharaj. Even his own father is so demonic and so egregiously, what's the word I'm looking for? Persecuting him. Still, he showed kindness and deference to him. He spoke to him nicely, spoke to him about Krishna, tried to give him enlightenment. So no one can imitate that. Even if you try, it'll be very difficult. Even if externally you say, I have no bad feeling, then when you're out for tea with your friend, you will spill the tea. I hate this person. You're not fake. It's not possible. You have to actually develop your consciousness to this standard. So for us, for bhaktas, for example, when we are developing our ethic, Rupa Goswami gives us advice. Well, this is specifically in the context of how to relate to different devotees, but you can extrapolate to the broader world also. He says, with some entities, you have to respect in the mind. Krishneti yasha giritam manasadriyet. We're not so advanced, so some entities you respect in the mind. Dikshati chats pranatabi shabajantamisham. Those who receive the diksha, initiation, it is presumed they have a right orientation toward reality, and they're doing bhajan. Then for those persons, pranata, we will offer our pranams, our respects to them. We may offer our obeisances. But only the bhajana vigna, ninda shundadi hrida ipsita sangalapta. The one who is advanced in his bhajan, whose heart is completely free from the tendency to criticize, etc. Ninda means criticism. Nindadi, so adi means etc. Because when you're criticizing, that comes with a certain aggressive energy, right? So his heart is completely free from all of that. Then for that person, we will surrender our everything to that entity. Shri Guru, Vaishnav, Thakur, like this, we will surrender to that entity. So this is, of course, how to apply loving exchange with devotees, but you can extrapolate to the greater world. Some entities have to be respected from a distance, like the entity in a tiger's body. You should also see this is manifestation of my Lord only, but I will not go embrace him. I'll not feed him also. He can feed himself. He can feed himself. It's quite all right. He's a lion. I think he could take care. You'll keep distance from that particular living entity. And that may also apply to certain, like non-devotees. They're also like lions. In some ways, they're considered worse than lions because they talk. And by the talking, they create so much bewilderment and atheism. Yeah. Prahlad Maharaj has a verse like this. Oh my God, what is this verse? I haven't quoted this verse in a few years. Kripana vatsala dusahogra samsara chakra grasa tampranita. This, hold on, give me a second. I'm gonna pull this verse up. This is 7th canto. He's praying to Nrsimha Dev. So it's chapter 9. 7-9. Grasa tampranita. It must come like around verse 18. Yeah, this one, 16. Yeah. Trastos nyaham kripana vatsala dusahogra samsara chakra karana grasa nampranita. So he's praying to the Lord as Kripana Vatsala, you are kind to the miserly, the ignorant souls in this world. He's saying that in humility, talking about himself. He said, I'm having fear. So in the previous verses, he was describing Nrsimha's form with intestines of blood, sharp nails, huge. And he said, I'm not scared of this. So that's a bold statement. I'm not afraid of this form. But then he says here, but he is afraid of something. Trostosmi aham, he's afraid of something. What is here? He says, due to my own karma, I've been thrown in this intolerable, ghastly material existence. Grasatam pranita. Pranita being thrown amongst those souls who devour each other. Because he's living also with demons. They probably actually do the eating, even of the humans. But also, as per the commentaries, they devour because they talk. And they offend God and his devotees. And that talk is very dangerous for us. So in that way, they're worse than lions. That's what I'm saying. So for them, you may also keep some distance, even though you also say they are manifestations of my Lord also. And then those who become the bhaktas and they're surrendering, you offer respects to them naturally, hopefully, not naturally, practice. And those who are fully surrendered to God, you give your everything to them. So this is a good ethic for us. So Srila Rupa Goswami giving us their ethic. But here in the Rantide verse, it's not an ethic. This is a realization of one who's realized. And so he's showing this kindness to this Daridra, this Shudra. And it's a very extraordinary thing, seeing his exalted position as a king, but still he's showing this deference because of his vision. So we also want to develop this Krishna consciousness, this awareness of our Lord as interpenetrating all of existence, so that we establish a relationship of respect towards everything, the mountain and the trees and the sky, the directions, the animals and the humans and so on. So it's a very beautiful thing. When people hear this line, they show no discrimination. It was very beautiful, very attractive. But you have to develop that consciousness. Otherwise, in the name of tolerance, you'll not be able to tolerate those who aren't tolerant, which is what it's saying today. They say, tolerate, tolerate, tolerate. But then you say, I disagree with that. And they say, you should be killed, or you're dangerous. And they call you all sorts of names and stuff. Because they don't have the vision of Brahman or Paramatma, how they can imitate. Not possible. I'll stop there. I don't know if anyone wants to ask anything. I think so. We have something here inside the room.
Okay.
Emily, yeah.
I do have a question. So King Rantide, he's a king, right?
Yeah.
So he was fasting and didn't feed his family, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't have any. He had a little bit, and then he gave that to Brahman. So especially with the past Bhagavatam classes we've had, it's been on my mind. Where does this idea of duty and what we would also call now human rights fit in? And as far as you would think that his duty, like Vedically in Varnashram Dharma, would be to feed his children no matter what, even though Brahmins are also worthy of offering that respect to. So I'm also asking, like in this scenario, but in general, where do human
We
rights?
can't hear what she's saying.
I know, I'm going to repeat. So the question is, Ranti Dev is showing deference to the Brahmana and later the Shudra, but what about his family? They also have to, they're also hungry. So does he not have duty to the family also? So the question is, how do we view, the concept of duty and also modern concept of human rights in the context of the story? I have no idea. In this context, we're hearing about the realization of someone who's situated in the vision of Brahman, right? Brahman Sthiti. So like I said, they have because their vision is very different than ours. So their ethic is very different, or may manifest very different. Not all the time. So now Krishna in the Gita Chapter 3, he speaks about persons who are self-realized, basically. He uses the word Atmarati, Atmatushta. They're satisfied in the self. They're experiencing pleasure in the self. So therefore they're not obliged to dharma, the ethic that governs the material world, because of their self-realization. Because the idea there is that the whole purpose of dharma is to bring you to that realization. So if you have that realization, you're not obliged to that ethic anymore. But there Krishna says, but still you should perform your dharma. And he uses the word loka samgraha, to show compassion to the general masses of people who don't have that realization, who are dependent on the ethic that governs the material world. And because you are the leader, yayara charati shishta satariva torojana sayat pramanam kurute lokasa anuvartate. Because you are the leader, whatever the leader is doing will be accepted as evidence for what everyone should be doing. So if you don't follow dharma, then everyone else will also not follow. Then that will lead to the destruction of the world. And then Krishna, after that, gives his own example that I'm God. I don't have any obligation to anything or anyone. But I'm also following the ethic that governs this world because I'm the best guy, being God and everything. And therefore, people see me, they will imitate. So I'm also following. He gives this example. So in that context, it is important for leaders to show proper example, it seems, and they will also follow the ethic that governs this material world. They may also follow. Without being obliged to it, they may also follow out of compassion for the general masses of people, Loka Sangraha. But because they aren't obliged to it due to their vision of, reality, the transcendence, they may also not do it. So other examples are also given in Srimad Bhagavatam, like Maharaj Anga in the 4th canto. He had King Vena as his son, right? That nonsense Vena. Vena was so puffed up. Of course, he was a good leader that all the criminals were scared to do crime. But he also was like, I'm God, basically, no need to worship God. So he stopped all the yajnas, stopped all the worship of God. Says the king is a representative of God, representative of all the devatas, so you just only worship me. So, and as a child, he was so cruel that he would be playing with his friends in the game. And if he would lose, he would just kill them. A terrible kid. So Maharaj Anga tried to, set him straight, but it wasn't working. So he was like, this household life is useless. So he just bounced. Middle of the night, just left the wife, left the kid, went off into the forest and just renounced. So I may say, well, what about his duty? And after he left, also crime just exploded in the society because there was no proper leader. So then someone said, look at the consequences of his irresponsible behavior. Yeah, you can give an argument like that, sure. And it may be true. But for one who is situated in the vision of the self, they are not obliged. So we will not be able to understand their activity so much. And we may actually criticize it. So Krishna speaks about this in Gita also. What is the time of awakening for common man, right? The time of awakening what is night for common man is the time of awakening for the self-control, the realized person, the enlightened person. And the time of awakening for common man is night for the introspective sage. So the meaning there is that they are awake and asleep to two different realities. So when you don't have this vision, you're awake to the empirical world and the world of Dharma and all of that. That'll be very important for you. So the self-controlled person, enlightened person, he may be asleep to that. Krishna uses the word Pashchato Muni. So he sees that also. So he sees the empirical world. He is aware of the ethic that governs that world also. There's a nice other verse in Uddhava Gita for this. Still, he rejects it. Even seeing that. Sadnisha, he is asleep to it. Even he sees it, he may also say, oh, this is very important. But he still may sleep to it, not perform it. So for those who are asleep to that vision that he's having, then they'll not be able to appreciate. But otherwise, the human rights and all that, that is there within the culture of Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, right? So Dharma is there. People talk about right, talk about what's your duty. The only reason you have to talk about rights is because someone's duty is not being performed. Therefore, you have to talk about rights. Otherwise, if everyone is doing their duty, there's no need for discussion of rights. So you talk about Dharma, what is your duty? Then this problem will be solved. So they have that there in the Dharma, Artha, Kama part of the Purushartha. The Purushartha means the goals of human pursuit. It basically means the ontology. But these are not just like suggestions. These are considered like obligations. You must do Dharma, Artha, Kama, or you moksha path. So they're not just like, hey, this would be nice if you, no, this is like your obligation. Otherwise you can go down. So there, the human rights will be covered in that portion. But we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is concerned with another reality. So the whole human rights thing is not necessarily preoccupation here. So that is actually considered cheating Dharma even. Dharma projita kaitava atra parama nirmasarana sutta. In this Srimad Bhagavatam, all cheating Dharma has been kicked out. And cheating Dharma begins with what? Dharma artha kama moksha. So there's human rights, if it falls within this Dharma part, that is also considered cheating. Human rights, rights, give me my rights, give me my rights. So what? You can enjoy sense gratification. So you can exploit. That's all the conversation is about. They're exploiting better than me and it's unfair. I want to exploit. Of course, I'm not saying, obviously there's egregious things going on in this material world, but that is actually the principle. Jivoji vasa jivana. The weak are the food for the strong. That is unavoidable. So once you banish the sacred from nature, there is no soul, there is no God, then this natural principle must play itself out, right? So when a tiger eats a deer, no one complains, right? So when a tiger amongst man is eating the weak humans, why are you complaining? That is nature. That's how nature works. So therefore, the development of spiritual consciousness is so critical for humans. Otherwise, this thing will play out in a most terrible way. Jivo, jivasa, jiva is actually literally unavoidable. You can go on crying about it, but does the deer care about the tiger care about the tears of the deer? No. So these cruel humans will not care about the tears of the crying humanity that they're devouring. So this is why spiritual development is so critical for the society. Otherwise, this natural thing will play out, and it's very scary. It's a very terrible thing. But also, it is also true, as a matter of point, that when people are crying for their rights, they're upset that they're not getting to enjoy like everyone else. It's unfair.
It seems like a mixture because there isn't duty, there isn't actual dharma, and so there's a extreme scale of, for example, like child abuse.
Yeah.
So in some sense, there's like that tendency of good for everyone, and then it makes the world better for you, but also that sense of
You can say like that. There's a sense, human rights for everyone. They have their more selfless expressions of it, like protect the children and so on. But at the end of the day, it's all based on sense gratification. It cannot be otherwise because there's a vidya, right? It cannot be, because there's ignorance, it cannot be otherwise. But if you follow dharma, then you can make progress. So therefore we say at least dharma, artha kama, at least follow that part. Trivarki kapata. At least you follow that. That is also ignorant, but at least you follow that. Otherwise your society will disintegrate. You cannot maintain social integration unless you follow this thing. So they said, we don't agree to that. Then your fighting for rights is useless. Unless you all agree to follow dharma, artha, kama, then fighting for rights will be useless because the bigger animal will devour the weaker animals. That's just how it's going to play out. Okay, go on crying. That's okay, but lamentation also is not a solution. You can try for it. And then they'll start big mass movements, right? So they take out the stronger animal, the weaker animals gather together en masse. They take out the bigger animal and then they become the bigger animal, right? And then the cycle continues, it repeats because they're not following dharma, artha, kama. They're in ignorance. So even the more selfless expressions is based on the same ignorance on them. So it's a little harsh to say it so plainly, and maybe you not say it like this in public, but it is a fact. So at least you follow dharma, artha, kama. You agree to that. No, we will not agree to it. Okay, yashastra vidyam ustregya vartate kama karata nasasadamavapnoti nasukam naparam. If you not agree to this, then it's suffering. Nasukam, no happiness, no perfection, neither in your life or the society, no attaining of the supreme destination. That's the result. So, sorry. For tears will be no solution to the issue. Okay, anything else anyone wants to ask before we set up?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Quickly.
Okay. You quoted Trinada Pisanichena when talking about how we should still be developing an ethic, but how is that not also an example of someone who's on a higher platform?
Yeah, that's a mature platform of bhakti. I was just saying there's some ethic there, you can say, but that vision is certainly considered as nishta bhakti. So nishta bhakti means like this, where you can constantly you're doing Harinam Sankirtan, Kirtaniya Sadhari, and then you do it with the humility, the tolerance, and so on. It's considered nishta bhakti. So yeah, that is also the fruit of a higher awareness. So therefore, I also mentioned Krishneti Yasha Giritam Manasadriyeta. Right? Some you respect in the distance, like this. I mentioned another verse for our ethic. Our basic ethic is to do bhakti yoga, worship God. and respect the devotees, which is part of that worship. That is our basic ethic. And then the good qualities will come in due course. That's what we say. Even if you don't see lots of evidence of that, that is our philosophy. It is a truth also. If one advances their ethic of performing devotional service, then they'll develop all the good qualities. Okay, it's 8:02, and I think the conch shell is about to ring, so I think we have to end here. Do I have another 1 minute, 2 minutes? 1 minute. Okay, if anyone has a quick, small question, yes.
Okay, so on rights, but not human rights.
On rights, but not human rights, soul rights.
Sometimes one comes into spirituality and they're kind of entitled in the sense of, I'm an eternal soul, shouldn't I be given this like practice and XYZ very easily? So does the soul have that kind of idea of a right?
Does the soul have an idea of a right? No, that is also nonsense. I'm an eternal soul, therefore I have a right to, no, homie. You have the right to serve Bhagavan because you're not self-existent and therefore independent. So if your existence is not independent, that means you are obliged to that which is the ground of your own existence, right? Without which you cannot exist whatsoever. So that is Paramatma, that is Bhagavan. So if you have any right, you have the right to serve Bhagavan. And aside from this, you have no rights. And if you think that you do, then Maya will have something to say about that. She'll give the tapachaya to you. Anyone who is oblivious of this need to serve Bhagavan, then for them, she gives tapachaya, threefold misery. I always play like, Durga with the trident on the lion and like all the small humans running from her. And she's just like, with her trident, take these threefold miseries. You don't want to worship Bhagavan? That is your only right. And if you don't agree to that, then take this tapachaya. So that's why we're trying to be kind to the humans, say, worship Bhagavan. Jeev Jago, go Chandra Bhota. Mahaprabhu has come with this good tidings, worship Krishna. They said, we do not agree to that. All right, take this tapachaya then. So when you say it in such simple terms, it sounds a little cruel, but it is not cruelty. It is like saying, if you stick your hand in fire, you will burn. So we're just telling that this is how it works. Why reality is like this and not some other way, I don't know, but it is what it is. So if you don't agree to this, to serve Bhagavan, then you take this suffering. And whether people agree to it or not, they are suffering. So we might have a point. If they're a little bit humble, they might consider that we have a point. I'm suffering so much, maybe I should consider worshiping Bhagavan. So, but if they're not humble enough, Maya will carry on with her tapachaya until you become thoroughly humble. And then when the Vaishnavas say, come worship Bhagavan, you may say, I agree to this now. Haribo. Okay, we'll stop here. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot for tolerating me. I'm sorry if it sounded intolerant. I was doing my best to represent the ideas of Srimad Bhagavatam. Go Premanandi Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Gaura Guru Bharati Ki Jai. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo.